All right, so I have pretty much reached my breaking point, and I want to use this platform today to get something off my chest. Now, let me first say, I am not against AI. I am not one of those resistors. I know there are still people out there saying AI is going to kill us all and it's going to take all of our jobs. And I've never been one of those believers. I've always looked at AI just like everything else that came before it. These are tools that are at our disposal. If we use them right, it can simplify certain tasks that we are responsible for completing. But one thing that I'm seeing in the podcasting space is this AI slop starting to overtake what good creators are putting out there. And that sucks. We're going to get to that too. But the bigger point that I wanted to discuss today was using ChatGPT and Claude and all these programs to copy and paste information and then passing it off as our own content just to have stuff out there. That's a slippery slope, and it's making us all sound the friggin' same. And I am just at a point where seeing this each and every day, it's causing a complex, but overall it's just depressing because I know that creativity is inside these people, but they're taking a shortcut. Hello, my name is Jason Sircone, and you have stumbled upon episode 85 of Podcasting Strategy Simplified. Now, I want to talk about this in the context of podcasting as well, because I believe that these shortcuts can bleed into your podcasting strategy, and that is no way to fly. There are ways that you can utilize these tools to make things easier. And yes, I am going to talk about those things. But what I want to dissect today and hopefully bring some awareness to this is this incessant need that we have to constantly be posting. Therefore, we're using these tools to just spit out dreck that sounds just like somebody else. It's using the same formatting. It's using the same comparative language models. It's using the same type of writing, and it just makes you blend in versus stand out. See, in the podcasting space, I feel that this platform is a blank canvas that allows you to explore your voice, explore your ideas, and put something together that once you put it out into the world, it impacts the right people the right way. But when we start to take shortcuts, that's when things start to fall apart. When it comes to copy and pasting from ChatGPT, I want to stress, listen, I use it myself. I believe that just like anything else, it's a tool that allows you to explore ideas and then get a framework, and then from there, build your own messaging around it and into it. I want to go back in time with you to when I was in college. And this is why I'm so... This isn't, I'm more perplexed by this because I'm just seeing posts from people that I respect that I can tell they are using AI and they are not injecting their own brand into it. They're just copying and pasting, and that's what they're doing to create content. And it's just for the sake of creating content. It's not doing anything to stand out. I'm not getting the same vibe that I used to get from your content because it's not you anymore. And I can tell, because I see it so often. But as I said, going back in time, when I was in college, I had a great class. It was film and literature. I believe this was my junior year. I love that class. And I believe the reason why I love that class so much is because it started off with film. The first half of the semester, we were watching movies, the classic movies like Casablanca and Citizen Kane, and dissecting all these different aspects of cinema and how these movies were created and the stories they were telling, and really diving deep into camera angles. I remember the final one, this assignment made me love this movie to this day, the movie Pleasantville. We dissected the opening scene, which was all these different jump cuts and the story those jump cuts were telling. It was incredible. I love that class for the first part of the semester. After the film part came the literature part. Now, I'm in my later years have become more of a reader, but still probably not to the degree of many people. I like to read business books. I've never been a fan of nonfiction and things like that. Or I'm sorry, fiction and novels and things like that. Nonfiction, business books, things that motivate, inspire, or teach me something. That's really what I like to dig into. This literature part was not about that. And this class was once a week, and we were expected to read a book from like the end of class to the next class and have a paper prepared. I couldn't do it. And I did it for almost all of them, but there was one that I just could not get into. Gosh, why can't I am 99% sure that book was The Scarlet Letter. And I went the cheating route, the cheap route, the shortcut. I couldn't figure out what to write about this book because I just couldn't get into the story. So I went to the internet and I found somebody else's write-up, copy, pasted, turned it in. We come back to class the next week, and the professor starts off by saying, we need to talk about plagiarism. And I knew I was dead to rights. And she did her spiel about how we can't do that. And of course it was, very much warranted. I of course felt bad. And everybody of course is looking around like, well, was it me? And I'm over here like, it wasn't me. Yeah, it was totally me. And I knew it was me. And she knew that I knew it was me. So this was a 2.5 hour class once a week and made us wait till the very end. And I was the last person to get his paper handed to him with a big note on the top about coming to see her after class. And I did. And I knew I was screwed, and I didn't try to hide it. And clearly she could tell that I didn't produce this paper on my own. And thankfully, she took some pity on me. Of course, she gave me a 0 for that paper, that assignment, and that knocked my grade down from an A to a B. And I want to say I finished the semester with a B+. And that would have been an A because I excelled so much with the film part of that course. And I remember her telling me, I could do worse, but you've been very active in our class. You're participating in our discussions. I don't want to just flunk you. So I'm going to give you a chance to redeem yourself. But obviously I'm going to have my eyes on what you're turning in. And I'm advising you now, no more shortcuts. And I took that to heart, and I thanked her for the opportunity to redeem myself. And I took the literature part of that course much more seriously for the rest of the semester. That was scary because I did think that was going to be a flat out F and I was done. And then I was going to have to stay in school for an extra semester to make up the points that I was losing from that course. But thankfully she took pity and I was fine. But point of this whole story is that shortcut was an eye-opener for me. Now we have the ability, and adults are doing it on a daily freaking basis. By the time I finish this sentence, someone will have copy and pasted and put something from ChatGPT in their own LinkedIn newsfeed or Facebook newsfeed and hit the submit button and said it was them. Why are we glorifying this behavior for adults when college students, like my story from a moment ago, we were held at such a higher standard for producing work that was centered around our own thoughts and our own concepts? Why did we get, or when did we get, and this is an honest question, if you have the answer for me, I'd love to hear it. When did we get to a point as a society that this overproductivity of content and need to continue to put content out into the ether became more important than stressing our own thought processes and our own concepts and our own abilities to break down certain problems and solve them on our own volition and from our own critical thinking milieu? I don't know when we got to this point, but I can tell you flat out, and I'd like to think I'm speaking for more than one person. I can tell you that I would much rather see you post once a week and have it be meaningful and have it be something that you thought of than using ChatGPT or any other AI engine to mimic your voice and put something out there that sounds like everything else. I'm seeing this with social media posts first and foremost, but I'm starting to see it more with show notes to bring this into the world of podcasting. Now, in full transparency, I will say that the blog posts that I create around this episode and every other episode that I do on jasonsircone.com, I start with my transcript, and I have a very specific brand prompt that I use that I have built out based on my personality, based on my brand initiatives, based on what I want this machine or this tool to produce for me. And once it produces the first draft, that's all it is. It's the first draft. This is my framework. This is how I am building these blog posts. I'm taking this initial framework and I am crafting it into my own words. So it's still coming from my words to start, but then there's even more of that going into the back end of it. That's my process. Not saying that it's perfect, but this is better than copying and pasting exactly what it gives me. And I'm just getting to this point, as I said at the top of the show, it's driving me crazy to see these everything is comparative language. All these posts that I see, it's not this, it's that. It's not this, it's not this, it's this. It's not tapioca, it's not vanilla, it's chocolate. What the fuck ever? Get to a point where we're beyond these short 2-word sentences. I'm seeing it in slogans. I'm seeing the AI thing bleed into the punchlines or taglines on flyers. And then the flyers, of course, are AI slop to a degree as well. AI is great when you use it the right way and you use it responsibly. If you start utilizing it to do everything you're doing and you start to remove your own creativity and your own thought process behind it, that's when things start to move more to the mean. And if you haven't noticed, these platforms are always going to back up what you have to say. They're your buddy. They're your pal. Whatever you type into that program, it's going to validate it for you. It's going to give you props for coming up with whatever you came up with. I like to argue with it, and I try to get to a point where it's telling me I'm wrong, just to see if it will do it. But that's the problem. Most times it won't, especially that first time, because it knows that it is trying to give you something that you can utilize right away. And if you're just taking that and putting it out there as your own, over time, and this is going to take a long time, but still, the more people subscribe to that school of thought and that school of function, we start to erode the amount of content that's available for us to create the content that's being fed into these engines and then pulled from these engines. It blows my mind because I don't want to sound like I am anti-AI, although this does make me sound a little anti-AI. I am anti-using AI wrong. I want to tell another story that gives some context to this. Back when I was doing my master's degree, we're really going back to the old days here with Jason Sircone in college, but here we are. I was doing my master's degree at Duquesne University. I finished that program and I was in the last semester and I was doing my thesis. I decided to do that thesis on employee engagement. This was in 2005. And in 2005, Google was just becoming a thing. Now, I don't know the history of this. This could have been something that had been more available, but I know in my own personal usage and in my own life, Google was becoming something that was simplifying a lot of things. One of those things being my ability to access information that allowed me to put together a coherent argument for my thesis. And I utilized a lot of resources that I found at the library, but I also used Google to find relevant information on the World Wide Web. And when I assembled my works cited, it was a healthy mix of resources that I got at the library, these being books or journals, magazines, you name it, and a healthy mix of internet websites that provided relevant information. Now, 2005, the internet was way different than what we have now, but I was not going to garbage websites. I wasn't going to what would have been that day's equivalent of The Onion. I was utilizing these platforms I was utilizing that platform to find relevant information that supported my arguments for this thesis, as I said. So I assembled everything, turned in a great paper, waited till I can't remember, it was a couple weeks later, we got our papers back. And on the top of my paper, it said A- with a little note next to it. Had you spent more time in the library finding real resources and not using Google so much, I would have given you an A+. Okay. So I saw that note and I just shook my head and I said, touche, professor, we're going to have to talk about this. I didn't say anything in class, but once class ended, I approached him and said, listen, I just want you to know, I'm not asking you to change my grade. A- is fine. If that's what you feel this work warranted, so be it. But you need to be aware, this is going to become more of a thing. I am not going to be the last person that submits work to you, having found a lot of the information via the internet. This platform, it's called Google, is making work so much easier, but it's allowing us to find information that might go even deeper than what we could find on the shelves in the library. So again, it's been a pleasure being in your class. I'm not asking for a change. I just feel it's my responsibility to let you know this is going to be more of a thing in your life. And he was fine, and we shook hands, and that was that. And look at where we went after that. I mean, everybody was using Google. School teachers, students, everybody at work. For personal life, Google became this massive thing. Search engine marketing and search engine optimization, yada, yada, yada. And of course, I'll think of how that's evolved over the last 20 some years since I had that conversation with my professor. My point being is that I was using that tool responsibly. Now, I could have used that tool much like I did back in my undergrad studies and found many variations of papers and tried to formulate a plagiarized piece of work and turn it in as my own. I had that ability, but I had learned my lesson from undergrad and knew I wasn't effing around like that in my master's program. But I knew that I wanted to take that information that I got from Google and express my thoughts around it in a very educated way. And there was, to me, at least as I was formulating this, no reason why I couldn't get this information from the computer just as if I was sitting in the library getting it from a book or an encyclopedia. That's how the world's progressed. Well, now we're living in a world where we have all of these tools at our disposal that make life easier. There's no question about it. You can do a number of different things with this stuff. But this is on a whole new level. And if you're using these tools the right way, there are a number of things that you can simplify in your life. Don't get me wrong. I'm not against that part of it. But if you're using them in an unresponsible way or irresponsible way, that's where things start to get murky. And I am of the belief that the more we start to see this blending together of real and AI, the people that are relying 100% AI and abandoning creativity, they're going to start to stand out for the wrong reasons. You look at me, I'm already starting to look at this content that I see in a much different way. And when I see this AI-driven content that I can tell was not touched, was just copy and pasted, I shake my head and just say, what are we doing here? That we could do so much better with this. There's no reason why you can't take that original thing that was spit out at you and craft it to be in your own words. You know, I had heard from people that the early adopters of ChatGPT when this first came out told me how great this program was for sparking ideas, for asking questions and having little chats, again, baked right into the name, to get some ideas to formulate, in podcasting parlance, show title names or show notes or show descriptions, anything like that. Maybe even to get to the point of, man, I don't know what I want to talk about on my podcast this week. I usually talk about XYZ. What do you think, what's being talked about in that arena that I could bring onto my show this week? That's a tremendous use of AI. And it gets your mind saying, oh, cool. Okay, now I can take this and build my message around it. And I've got my podcast for the week. I've got my social media content for the week. I get scared that everybody sounds so similar that it's almost like those alien shows on television where everybody's wearing the same uniform. That's what we turn into. At least in regards to our posting, it's all sounding like the same old dreck every single day. And if I don't see one more post of it's not this, it's not this, it's that, it'll be too soon for me. The reason again that I wanted to bring this up, for one, like I said, I've been developing a complex over this. I'm seeing it so much, and it's so frustrating and heartbreaking. Hell, even I'm part of Empowered Podcasting, and we're planning our conference, and I know some of the submissions we got for speakers were AI generated. This happened last year too. You know, this may be a personal thing, but I'm going to put this out there just to say, if you're submitting to bring your voice to a stage and you have a topic that you want to talk about, but you can't get past ChatGPT to talk about what you're going to bring to the stage, what does that say for what you're going to say when the microphone's in your hand and the spotlight's on you when you're on the stage? That works in reverse as well. Something meaningful happens in your life, something that you've been striving to get to an award or just a destination or a milestone in your business, and you can't sit down and come up with 5 or 6 sentences to express your gratitude and express how much it means to you because you've put so much time and effort and energy into accomplishing this goal. You have to use a ChatGPT or a Claude to write that. I'm not saying that everybody has to be the most well-written person in the world, because everybody's writing abilities and conceptual ways of creating content exists on different levels. What I'm talking about is dehumanizing real emotion and real thought and real passion for what we have to say. That's what gets lost in this AI slop. And speaking of that, as I said, in podcasting, bringing it into your strategy, there are ways to leverage it, but I will say one thing that should never become the main thing is AI hosted content. If that's 100% what your podcast is, and if you don't disclose that, holy shit, are you on the wrong path? But we've got companies like Inception Point out there that are putting out 300, 400 AI slop driven podcasts a day. I can't remember exactly what the statistics are, but they're crazy. But it's stuff like that that makes the honest people that are using this platform to tell their story, to communicate with their audience, to make an impact, fall further down the line because there's all of this other crap out there that they have to compete with, and none of it has any real human emotion behind it. It's all just AI generated bullshit. That's not cool, man. that to me is just not what this platform was built around. The podcast platform was built around storytelling. It was built around effective communication. It was built as a blank canvas, as I said before, for us to explore our thoughts, explore our messaging, explore the deepest meanings of our expertise, and really break it down in a way that you, as a consumer, can take that in, absorb what you want, filter out what you don't want, but ultimately get to a point to where you move yourself 1% in the right direction based on the guidance that you receive from the content that you were seeking. Real change is going to come from real people. And I fully understand that we have a lot to do in our life, right? Between work and personal life and everything else that we're balancing. Tools like this come along and, oh my God, I don't have to spend as much time doing this one thing. I can use this ChatGPT or Claude model, and it's going to do the thing for me. There's beauty in that, and I am not disqualifying that part of it. But what I'm saying is that if you're using these tools, there are responsible ways to use them. And copying and pasting exactly what they give you on the first go, it may not seem like an existential thing right now, but you fast forward over time, and I really feel like it is going to bring up some major problems. I remember when I first tapped into ChatGPT, and I remember the first thing I thought of was that story I told you before when I was doing my undergrad. I was like, my God, could I have done some damage with this? In a way, I was glad it didn't exist. But I immediately thought about my sister, who was a school teacher. And that was the first thing I said was, man, is this going to make life hard for teachers? Because there's no reason why someone that has the mind of going online to find somebody else's paper can't go to ChatGPT and say, hey, ChatGPT, write me XYZ, blah, 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 and get something that works. But see, that's the problem. And I know that many schools have put a lot of things in place so they can tell. And I've talked to a couple of my friends that are teachers, how vigilant they have to be to check this over. But in other schools, the ones that where the parents are bitching and winning all the wars over the teachers, they don't fight it as much as they should. And that to me is scary as hell. We start planting these seeds of making everything easy now. Well, what's going to happen when a child who's still developing mentally, physically, verbally, socially, they get into a world where not everything's easy? What does that lead to? So there's a number of different ways that I could go with this, but I want to tie this all together and bring it back to podcasting to close this conversation down. I feel there are a number of things that you can utilize the different platforms for, but as you're building out your podcasting strategy, you have to think about what those things are and think of the ideas that you really want to expound upon with your show. What's going to make the most sense to utilize a platform like that to assist you, like bringing ChatGPT into the mix? Like I said, for my blog posts, I like to use that to build frameworks that I can then build my blog posts around my own thoughts. And I'm starting the framework based off of my words because I'm just pouring the transcripts in. So that's a way to use it in a way that I feel like it doesn't just because the opposite of that is just going in and saying, hey, I just put out a new podcast about AI. Can you write me a 600-word blog post about it? Well, it could spit me back anything, and it would be probably zero connection, maybe 1% connection to the actual content of the podcast. And I could push that out there as my own if I wanted to. But I don't feel that does any justice for you, because when you read that, it just comes off as slop. And it doesn't do any justice for me because I'm trying to position myself as a thought leader based on my own thoughts. That's why this podcast exists, so I could share what I believe is the proper way to build a podcasting strategy. Today, I might have went a little bit off the reservation, flipping out about AI. But overall, the point of all of this is using AI in your podcasting strategy can be done, but it needs to be done so responsibly. Do not come into this thinking, well, I don't have to worry about writing show notes or blogs or anything else because I can just use ChatGPT to write all that for me. That's partially true, but you have to make sure that how you're using it and then what you're feeding it is going to give you the best possible result. And the best possible result, again, isn't about you. It's about who's consuming your content. And if you're putting content out there that sounds exactly like the person next to you, well, how do you stand out? How does that make someone say, ooh, I need to work with this person? I need to bring them into my life to coach me, to take me to the next level. It doesn't. It doesn't. It makes you blend in and sound the same. I've said this multiple times with podcast covers. The rage when people were creating podcasts, and believe me, I was in it too. I fell for it too. We were creating a podcast, so we got to put a microphone on the cover. Microphones and sound waves on the cover mean you have a podcast. So many people did that. It doesn't make you stand out. It makes you blend in. Putting out content that's spit out from ChatGPT, because they're going to use their format, their comparative language with it's not this, it's this, it's not this, it's that. That's going to be how everybody else sounds. And the more you start doing that and following suit, the more you sound like everybody too. So my lesson and my challenge to you is, as you think about how AI is going to help you in your everyday life, from podcasting strategy right through to the content you're posting online, how are you using these tools to create something that still captures your voice? And to take a step backwards, how important is it to post something every single day when it really isn't your messaging, when it really isn't about you and your brand? How important is it to just be productive for productivity's sake? I feel we need to take a step back and start reevaluating what that means and what productivity means in our life. The more that we can get to a point to where we're putting out messaging that absolutely speaks to what we want to accomplish and what we want our audience to accomplish by listening to us, the more wins we're going to get. And the less we're going to have to rely on ChatGPT to produce everything for us. Can we use these tools to help us? Absolutely. In fact, I encourage that, but do it responsibly. I felt like I had to get this off my chest because this is just something that it's, yeah, on a personal level, driving me a little nuts, but I don't want to see good podcasters or good aspiring podcasters go down a path that they can never recover from. They can never come back from. Do this the right way from the start, and you're going to see much better results from your podcast going forward. And with that, we're going to bring the curtain down on this episode of Podcasting Strategy Simplified. I hope you had a great time, because I know I did. Believe me, I did, even though it didn't seem like I was at certain times. Until our paths cross again on this podcast or anywhere else that we collide on the internet, my name is Jason Sircone. This has been Podcasting Strategy Simplified. I'll leave you by reminding you that podcasting isn't easy, but it doesn't need to be complicated. I'll see you next time.